This is 1,720 days since Richard was taken, forcibly taken, and his life was taken, and they absolutely did terrible things to his remains. And so this is since it's cartel tied, since it's international, since it's cartel tied to the military, our military, since it's cartel tied to the federal courthouse, since it's cartel tied to the El Paso District Attorney's Office, since it's cartel tied to the AUSA Western District of Texas office, since it's cartel tied to the El Paso FBI field office, since it's cartel tied to the criminal law magistrate court, since it's cartel tied to the ISDs, the Independent School District Police Department, since it's cartel tied. Um, uh, um, Throughout this, right? Throughout this. And we're not just saying it. It's not me saying it. If you have been following from the very, very beginning when we were in El Paso, you would absolutely know. We're over 4 years doing this, and we have been very, very patient. And investigating every day, and we have proof, even though they take off the live streams, but we have it, on other platforms, and saving, so that we have all the evidence of every day-to-day journaling, video journaling, and also identifying the crimes, documenting the crimes, filing the crimes to all the agencies and institutions to do this legally, which requires a lot of patience because you have to get the evidence. And if you read anybody saying that we don't have evidence, that we don't post evidence, then you have to ask that person, what ties do you have with this? Are you aiding and abetting a criminal network that is tied to the Sinaloa cartel? Are you aiding and abetting those that are covering up for the murder of so many Hispanics, 4 German, 4 Americans in the Walmart mass shooting? Are you aiding and abetting this criminal network that is covering up for trafficking, like the child trafficking, 10,000 at a time, using our military base, hundreds of thousands of children that are now mostly dead? Are you aiding and abetting the trafficking of our weapons, of our ammunition, of our supplies there on Fort Bliss, while trafficking the substance abuses to our soldiers, diminishing our fighting force, right? Our protective fighting force, our defense, risking our defense and breaching our security, by infiltration, by embedding? Are you aiding and abetting that? Because that's treason, right? That is aiding and abetting an organization. That's the big T. And so you can see that we are absolutely have discovered what is going on, right? What is going on, because you have the most ridiculous, oh, you haven't given evidence. All we've been doing is giving evidence. And you can do some research too. I know it's a little inconvenient, but it's very, very important. And in times such as this, we have to be inconvenienced. And we have to go to the Texas Constitution, and we have to ask, when you have a court that has full jurisdiction, What are the qualifications to be a judge on that court? And it will come back that you need to be elected, that you need to be elected. So the court that is handling over 90% of the cases there in El Paso County is illegitimate. Not, I shouldn't say that the court is illegitimate. The court is legitimate. It's just that these impersonators that are not elected, that are acting like judges, are illegitimate. Okay, so the impersonators that are giving orders like they're, it's like clowns. It's they're dressing up like they're judges and they're not. They're illegitimate because they're not elected. And that's not me saying that. That's the Texas Constitution. And we have filed it, and we have shaken up, the institutions and the agencies because, you know, they are just trying to deal with what they're going to do with this because since 2015, so you have a decade of major cases that is being shaken up. And so it's not something that I think they're used to dealing with, right? That they have to say, oh my gosh, our very, very powerful court is messed up because those judges need to be elected and they're not. So now they're impersonators, right? And we have filed because of our request for open records for District Attorney Bill Hicks, who is not what we discovered is that he's not the district attorney, that he did not sign his anti-bribe line before, and when he was getting caught, he made a phone call to the Secretary of State right there in Austin for help. She aided and abetted him. We had to report that. It took us a while. It was heartbreaking. To write that letter was absolutely heartbreaking, because you have tampering at such a high level, in the governor's office, in the governor's Secretary of State office. That's not us saying it. That's not us wanting it. That's not us, uh, you know, what we want. We want a system that's functioning, right? That obeys the law because they're supposed to be enforcing the law. They're supposed to be adjudicating the law. And, that's what we want. And it's very obvious to us why there was such a cover up with our son's case because you have a crime family network. Um, that is embedded in the system, that calls in deals and things like that, and really that's why Fort Bliss was shaking. I mean, literally, the soldiers were shaking, and we provided the video of that. Remember when I went to the soldier's house that was calling out? He was in his backyard screaming at us that he knew something about Richard's case. And so as we were in a car parade, and we stopped the parade, and I went over there to talk to him, and he was just, when it came to face, he just did not know how to act. He was so afraid. He was just shaking. And, it was just so evident that something really, really big and abnormal had happened to Richard. And of course, Richard was murdered, right? Richard was murdered. And so but there was such a cover up from the agencies and of course the the command, right? The command, and they're they are in real trouble because they are facing treason charges. They are facing the death penalty. General McConville, General Mealy, General Kelly, General Garrett, General Bernabe, uh, General Stewart, and he's these are not all of them are 4-star generals. Bernabe's a 3-star, and Stewart is a 2-star, and Clem Coward, White. Um, there's more. My husband has it all listed. They are facing the death penalty, for their treason. And that's a lot of them, right? Oh, yeah. Donna Martin. Who can forget Donna Martin, the provost marshal, the IG of the Army, right? She was provost marshal in charge of CID and then the IG of the Army. And, who can forget her? Coming out of uniform and all the lies, and then on January 5th, contacting us, telling us not to go into January 6th because they absolutely knew because it was a setup. That's why this is uh so hard for the media and the institutions to report on, because how do you report on this? It's so big. It makes the Iran Contra look like, little child's play. And they did it to attack President Trump. And so he absolutely knows about this because they weaponized those agencies. They weaponized the Walmart case. They weaponized Richard's case. They weaponized it all to uh, falsely attack President Trump with this white supremacist narrative, hate crime narrative. And we know now that the Mayellas and the Mayella Crucius family, they're one and the same. They're the same family, the criminal family that has embedded the federal courthouse and the DA's office and the FBI and Walmart's cybersecurity, contracts. And also Lorraine Mayella. She is a registered mental health care counselor. Let me tell you, there was a lot of money that was allocated to contract out mental health counselors for the Walmart mass shooting victims and their families, and uh, to participate in that would be it's like a spy within, right? A spy within, knowing what they saw, knowing uh, and they could even gaslight, right? They can even gaslight, and do like a hypnosis, the spinning, where they, Veronica Escobar likes to do that, and Beto O'Rourke and Bob Moore, uses false narratives. They did that in Richard's case. The military does it. It's asymmetric warfare tactics. They use a false narrative and spin your brain so that you will not know how to define a woman, right? They will, just spin your brain so that you think that all immigration is legal immigration, even though there is a difference between legal immigration and illegal immigration. They'll spin your mind to make you think that Patrick Crucius in less than 2 minutes um could uh, with 30 rounds do what he did, or whatever. They spin it so bad that it's hard to explain it, because it will come out the way they want it. They want you to think something totally different than what in reality happened. And and that their family, right? And you have to also remember that this is cyber security. This is cyber hacking. absolutely involved in this. And this is also institutional with the FBI, with the DA's office, with the Attorney General Western District of Texas office. They have access. This is in the CID. They have access to the files. This is in the VA's office, okay? Also in the VA's office, the VA's office plays a big part in this, right? And this, so you have, and in the courts, right? Um, so you have, Steve Spitzer, right? You have those involved that have access to all of this information. And so it is not reaching too far to let everyone know that there's been tampering. There 100% there has been tampering of the files, which then when you do your searches, your Google searches or whatever, or even on the AI, you'll do your AI searches and it will come back, like, oh, there's no evidence of this. But if you, that's why you need to do your research with open records. You need to open records. Um, and also audio. You need a lot of audio. You need a lot of boots on the ground, a lot of intelligence. And, we've been very, very blessed in our family to have, uh, you know, uh, I was born at White Sands. I keep telling people that. White Sands is to have connections in White Sands, New Mexico is very important in this. To have connections in El Paso is very important to this. To know Juarez, Mexico, to have connections in Mexico is very important in this. To have connections in Germany is very important to this. To have connections in the military is very important to getting to the reality because the records have been accessed and tampered with. And a false narrative like what um, Bob Moore tries to do, what Angela Kachurga tries to do, feeds. Well, they don't try to do it; they do it. They give a false narrative, and so our evidence we put out there, and we put out every day. And I'm telling you right now that Alexis Crucius is married to Brian Blake Crucius. Alexis Mayella is married to Brian Blake Crucius, who is the brother of Patrick Crucius. And there is a real there's other things going on here, and there is a real um gosh, well, we already know um that there's more coming out. That there's more coming out. That's gonna just it's what more do you want? That Michael Gianni Maiella Jr., right? That he is a cyber security technician, trained hacker that was in the DA's office, that was in Walmart cybersecurity, that was in the FBI office, that deals with contracts, government contracts, military contracts, that is, and then his father has all this access to the cases. And Patrick Crucius is their family, and they're going to worship um with Steve Spitzer is a USA assistant AUSA. He goes into the federal courthouse all the time. That's his job. He has to deal with Michael Mayella all the time. It's his job. So they have a very personal relationship even outside their job. So they're working together and have a personal relationship, family's relationship. And, how can you keep these romantic, um, what about grandbabies, right? Um, these relationships quiet, right? Um, And, with the connections with Jaime Esparza, with the connections with Rosa Maria Valdez Garcia, with the connections with the VA office, with the connections to so much of the cartel tied criminal trafficking. And so, what they're covering up is that they're covering up for the murders of the Hispanics that were killed that day, for the German that was killed that day, for the Americans that were killed that day, for the people that were harmed, and for the division that was sowed with a false narrative. They're covering up, um, all this talk about President Trump and trying to secure the border. And I think that there needs to be more talk about the Mayela Crucius crime family, right? Crime family network, the Mayela Crucius crime family network that are absolutely working together. Anthony uh, Aoun, right? Hope I get his name right. Priscilla Mata, absolutely working together to cover up um, the murders of the Hispanics that were killed that day, of the German that was killed that day, of the Americans that were killed that day. And then to have a Patsy that was absolutely involved in all of this, okay? Because he's part of the Mayela Crucius crime family. But he is, he has a broken brain, right? He has a broken brain. He has severe autism. Joe Spencer is making a media run, right? He's doing this media run right now, and he has to say things right now that he never said before, right? Because we have turned all that in. I mean, it's we have filed, I'm just thinking about the numbers. It's in the it's I don't want to be cuz how do you count it? You know, if you file one letter, but you file it to 200 people, do you count it to 200 people, or do you count it one letter? You know, uh, and these letters are jaw dropping, absolutely jaw dropping. And I should start just sharing all of these letters. But that will come out. That will come out. But they are absolutely jaw dropping because they have case numbers, they have the audio transcripts, they have the documentation, the exhibits. We have to add all the exhibits to all of our complaints, which is hard evidence, the hard evidence. And I think they're just like deer in headlights. They don't know what to do because how do you address this kind of criminal network, right? How do you address this kind of criminal network? Well, President Trump came in January 20th, and 4 days later, we received the in the line of duty confirmation. Along with that, the Sinaloa cartel are now designated as the Big T organization, which makes handling these criminal networks a bit. Well, you at least know how to do it, and that is you're able to cut off their funding. He cut off the USAID funding, which is very, very important because the way, they're making all this money, so they have to launder the money. The way they launder the money is through all of these NGOs, right? And so to cut off the funding, and then also they have to clean up our military, right? They have to clean up our military, um, and they have to, there's just so much, there's so much, and they still can arrest Leilani Hart. Okay, there's no excuse for that. They can arrest Leilani Hart. But, Agent Morales, I think he has some real problems. He's facing some real problems. And yeah, he's between a rock and a hard place. I think he is. But there's no excuse. They can absolutely arrest Leilani Hart. Sorry, Leilani Hart. And yeah, they can arrest her too. Um, but she's a Mexico, right? She's a Mexico. Rosa Maria is. Um, so maybe the Mexican officials can arrest her. But they are absolute um, thieves. They worship larceny. That's what they worship. They worship being, conning the people, and they absolutely, talk about a hate crime. I think they just are just the pinnacle of hate crimes. Hate for the country, hate for our military, hate for the poor people, hate for victims, hate for the families of victims, because they absolutely are extorting all of that. Um, and if, look, so much money was put towards mental health treatment for the families and the victims and the families for the Walmart mass shooting. But that's nothing compared to the trafficking, what they make on the trafficking, billions of dollars. So of course they're going to say, "Oh, I'm so nice. I'm so nice. I'm going to put forth you know, this chunk of money because it's good investment for them, right? To keep the trafficking going." And Veronica Escobar and Beto O'Rourke have no excuse, right? They absolutely did everything in their power to keep that border open so that the trafficking could just go with impunity, right? So now, there's a lot of of teeth because the border is being closed. That shuts off a spigot. The USAID is closed down. That shuts off a spigot. So the NGOs shuts down a spigot. The military contracts are absolutely being looked at, and a lot of funding is being lost there because they're redirecting where they're putting their money. That's closing off a lot of spigots. And, all of this is being addressed. So everything is in God's timing. And we are continuing. There's a lot of work still to be done. But I don't think there's any doubt when you look at all of the evidence that we have provided, um, just online, and that's just a portion of it. I try to put everything up there, but it would just blow people's minds because it gets into the, you know, a lot of infiltrators that came into our case at the very beginning that were working. But it's yeah, it's uh, we try to focus on picture, the bigger picture, the generals, the contracts, like Nadal Baim with the contracts with the LLCs. That's huge. That's really big because he's the father-in-law of Bradford Bugado, the lieutenant colonel in the G3 of the 32nd ATCOM, which is Richard's command. Um, that's really big. We try to look at what's going on in the DA's office, what's going on in the attorney generals for the Western District of Texas. We try to look at what's going on in the courts, right? What's going on in the FBI office, what's going on in the CID office. And the connections with Howell, the connections with Howell. Um, with oh my gosh, it's the Mayella Crucius Family Crime Network. That's what it is. It's the Mayella Crucius Criminal Family Network, crime family network. And they're the ones responsible for covering up for the murders of the Hispanics that were killed during the Walmart mass shooting, for the German that was killed during the Walmart mass shooting, for the Americans that were killed during the Walmart mass shooting, and why would they do that? What really happened? What really was the motive? What really was the purpose? And we say that there were audits, there were investigations, they were under pressure because Richard had exposed their criminal network and he was an official whistleblower to that. And when you have an official whistleblower to that, it makes things happen. And that's why they had to kill him. But they had to go after the chief law enforcement officer, which was the president of the United States, that was actually looking into it. And everyone knows that what I'm saying is right because we see it day to day now that President Trump is taking real actions. And when you're cutting off the funding of then it was the Juarez cartel, right? He cut off the funding of the Juarez cartel. You can look at the EOs for 2009, well, 2017 through 2019. You can look at the EOs. The executive orders are very, very telling in all of this. And you can tell that they were under immense pressure because they wanted their luxury homes, they wanted their luxury cars, they had bills to pay, they wanted to pay for their multiple families, they wanted to pay for their trips, for their vacations, for their diamonds, for their whatever fancy watches and phones and whatever. And the spigot was being turned off. And Richard was part of the reason for that those spigots to be turned off. And the Walmart mass shooting, I think there was a lot of nervous people that were tied to the cartel, a lot of nervous people that didn't want anything to do with it anymore because they were really facing some major charges. And so they went hog wild um, with their uh, with their methods, and you see that very, very clearly. Um, and this is billions of dollars, y'all, billions of dollars. And the child trafficking is, how do you admit to that, right? How do you admit to that? You don't want to admit to that, you want to keep it going, but you don't want your name connected to it. But they're connected to it. General John Kelly is connected to it. Um, all of the Mayella Crucius crime family is connected to it. And it is, it's a multi-billion dollar business. And it really makes you disgusted at some yeah, the law enforcement makes you disgusted, right? To see what they've done to children. And they really prey on the weakest, and absolutely the poor in in Juarez, and the poor that is in this country. And that's why they like the illegal migrants, because um, they, you know, they enslave themselves, and they're not free. And they can be bribed easily. They can be brought into the cartel tied criminal network easy to do dirty work. It really is a dark hole that spirals downward into the depths of despair and everything for them. And so then you see, the suicide rate going up and everything. But Richard was targeted because he stood. He's a hero, He stood and um, stood his ground, and he really is. And I don't say that just because I'm his mother. At the very beginning, if you've been following, I allowed for everything. Give me all the stories, and let's discern. Let's look at the evidence. And well, I'm telling you, the evidence shows that he's a total hero. And so, which is very humbling for our family. Um, to have such a hero, right? To have such a hero. And yeah, and that's why they murdered him, okay? Because he didn't compromise. And the evidence shows that he didn't compromise. Um, he showed real courage where the generals are absolute cowardice. Absolute y'all, they are, if you only knew some of the letters we've gotten, they are absolute cowards. It is, and God has just a way, Clem Coward, right? Clem Coward. Just the cowardiceness of our generals is disgusting. And not all of them, but, all of them in this case, all of them in this case. Um, so we are absolutely ready for Secretary of Defense Hegseth to show us real generals, real leaders, um, with courage. Because Richard, just had so much courage. He showed the courage where they were just cowards, and he's a hero. So thank you so much, Anicia, for coming on, for your prayers and your love. This is Holy Week, um, and just getting the house ready. And uh, I had to share all the garden stuff. I hope you enjoyed that. We just have to um, take time out, even though look, I'm a little early today. I'm a little early today. But we will be absolutely burning the midnight oil because we have documents that we have to prepare and get out, along with preparing for this amazing holy day of accountability and restitution. Accountability and restitution. And the glory of that, the happiness, the joy of that, the new life of that. Get out your bunnies, get out your butterflies. I really love butterflies. Get out your eggs, get out your tulips, get out your daffodils, get out your baskets and put cheese and wine. And I bought these little bottles of bubbles to put in my baskets I want to give out. Um, it's just, it's really a time to celebrate all of God's creation. Get out your rainbows, right? They've tried to put a false narrative on the rainbow. The rainbow is a glorious hope. Um, and so, yeah, just try to take back what they've tried to tarnish. And all of this, oh, this is pagan or what. None of those pagans are creators. None of them. They didn't create the bunny. They didn't create the chick coming out of the egg. They didn't create the hen laying the egg. They didn't create the grass. They didn't create the flowers and the sky and the sun and the moon. They didn't create that. You know, they might worship the created, but we worship the creator, and the creator of all things that are absolutely glorious. And so, and I've always told my children, don't let them destroy your holy days and all the beauty. They want you to worship, um, doing terrible things to children, lying, con jobs, larceny, getting over on people. That's what darkness, doom, um, the destruction of the family. That's what they want you to worship. And so they call out the bunny or the lamb and, do a psyop and say it's pagan and all that. They're the ones that are pagan. And so I hope that you get out all the beautiful Easter decorations and flowers um, uh, and and enjoy the holy day of our redemption, right? Our redemption by the Creator, the only one that could hold us accountable and pay restitution, so that we could live, so that we could live. So I think that that is really the message and the strength. When people say, "What does that have to do with Richard Halliday?" Well, it has to do with how he was raised. It has to do with the strength behind our investigation. This has required incredible strength, um, to do this every day for almost 5 years, um, and that comes from God. So you better believe it that I am going to celebrate. I'm going to get the best meat. I'm making these little bunny rolls. I'm making these little lamb rolls that you put, you know, uh, crumbs. You can make butter crumbs. You can put that on. It makes them look like sheep, right? For the kids at church, for all the children, for everybody, they all like it. Um, um, you know, get out the grill, however you love to celebrate, and beautiful salads. And I really love a good watermelon salad with feta cheese in it. I love those that combination. Get out your favorite things and enjoy the season, and that will give you the strength to face the challenges, to carry our cross, to carry our own cross, each of us that we have to bear. And in our case, it is this investigation into our son's murder and against the very institutions and agencies that have covered up the murders um, of our son and of the Hispanics, the German, and the Americans that were killed that day on August 3rd, 2019. Uh, yeah, and many more, causing so much, so yeah, it takes a lot of strength. And thank you so much for coming on and sharing this. And we will be back tomorrow, God willing.